All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I just want to let you guys know this is being recorded. It'll be later. They'll post it to the FSHD Society YouTube page. So if you don't want your name or your face recorded, you can put something else up. But we're gonna go ahead and get started, and if people can just jump in as they arrive. The way we're going to do this, I'm going to introduce Sam, and then we're going to show a video of her doing some exercises with my son and with Kristen's daughter, Kate. And then I'm going to pause the video, and you guys can jump in and ask questions then. Or if you have a question that comes up while you're watching the snippet of the video, you can type it into the chat, and then Sam will answer that when we pause. And then at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A or just discussion amongst the parents, okay? So this is Sam Nydig. She is a doctor of physical therapy. She's a physical therapist at the Tucson Orthopaedic Institute here in Tucson, Arizona. She received her undergraduate degree at the University of Evansville in Indiana. And then she went on to get her doctorate in physical therapy. She's certified in brain injury, and she's familiar with other neurological conditions. She has been working with my son, who's 16, who has early-onset FSHD. He had spinal fusion surgery in August of 2020, and she's been working with him since then. First, they started out in the pool, and then they started graduating onto land physical therapy, and he has made tremendous strides. He's gotten so much stronger working with Sam. So Sam, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're doing this on your free time, and we appreciate you being here very much. And this is a very important topic for everyone with FSHD. But I think parents and the early onset FSHD, because it does progress so much quicker than the traditional onset, is very important to get our kids into physical therapy early to hopefully keep them out of wheelchairs. And then if they do progress to a wheelchair, to keep them limber, because there's a lot of things that come up that I didn't know about once they get into a wheelchair that happens with their body's contractures and things. So again, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead, and you want to say hello, and then I'm going to go ahead and share the screen with the video.
I'm Sam. I work with Allie's son, Sam. I've been doing outpatient neurological therapy for about 6 years, with most of my time concentrated in brain injury and then spinal cord injury as well. But I've always been that person who enjoys a good curveball. So anything outside of the normal things that come down the line, I'm always jumping at that too. So I have worked with quite a few people with muscular dystrophy. All right. Thank you.
You guys see the screen?
Yes.
Can you see the video? Okay.
Thank
yes.
You.
All right. This is good arm exercises. Got it. Nice. Nice. I'll try an overhand one. Good.
Nice. Fastball. Good catch.
So Sam is getting ready to train.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it and let Sam talk about that's just some exercises, obviously, that Sam and I were doing at home. Sam, do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, so that exercise that we just saw hits at actually quite a few things that Sam is working on. One of those being core control. You saw that he was sitting up on the ball. It was on a stable surface, which was right for him, but you could make that harder doing it on, you know, just a rolling ball out in the open, or even doing it standing up if you're capable of that. And then with the arms, with the balloon especially, Sam's able to use all the active range of motion that he has and start to build some strength to bring his arms up, because he has more time to react to that. With the ball, there's a little bit less time to react, so he's getting some good power lifting the ball and throwing it back. But If he was a little bit stronger, you'd even be able to make that harder by throwing the ball to different areas, making him reach and getting outside that base of support.
It's also just a fun exercise for us to do, just to have some fun and for him to get some therapy.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions about either of those before I move on?
So you're saying that you've seen an increase from surgery?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Yeah, so you're saying that you've seen an increase in his strength from surgery. So like, how long did that take before you were actually seeing results?
So when after his surgery, he got his surgery in October or August of 2020. In October, I took him to a different physical therapist, and he was doing some OT and PT, and he had lost a lot of weight, and he was very weak, and there was a lot of things going on, and he just couldn't really sustain the therapy. And then that's when they suggested that he start pool therapy with Sam. So then we took him over to pool therapy with Sam. When did we start that? Maybe in January 2021. It's been about a year.
Yeah, it was probably about January, maybe early February.
And he was still pretty weak then. And then with the pool and then just nutrition and getting stronger that way with the pool therapy really was a good way to kind of ease him back into land therapy, because land therapy was just too much for him after the surgery. But
Yeah.
Sam, how long did would it take before you started noticing like a dramatic?
It is highly individual. One of Sam's big barriers that he was running into at the traditional land-based therapy was just how much pain everything was at the time for him, versus when we got into the pool, that eased up a lot of the pain almost immediately, which just allowed him to make so much more gains in a much faster way. So it just depends on what you do and having that pain be under control.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Move his spine. He has to use the relationship between his head and his hips to get himself over. Basically what that means is his head is going to go down and away from the mat as his hips come up and toward the mat. Sam, can you show us that? Beautiful. Can you show us that the other way? Head down, hips up, you got it. And as you can see, as long as there's not a big gap, you can do this transfer apart. A lot of people have one side that's going to be stronger than the other. And you can always use that side to your advantage as well. And come back over here one more time. That goes the opposite way of the hips. Beautiful, beautiful transfer. And come straight forward a little bit more this way, so we're not compensating. Five, can you do the last 5 with your arms crossed? 6, 7, 8, 9. Very good. So this is.
All right, you want to talk about those the transfer and then the bounce?
Yeah, so for the transfer, if you didn't catch what I said in the video, one of the big things that helps people as they lose ability to really use their legs in a really powerful way is to get their head and their hips doing the opposite thing to help them transfer, get up in bed, any number of things really. Also very useful for getting up off the floor, is your head's going to go down and forward as your bottom comes back and up. So for Sam, if you're transferring over to the right, your head needs to go down and to the left as you're pushing a little bit with the arms, a little bit with the legs, so the bottom comes up and over. And then the same thing in reverse. You might have noticed that I'm pretty distant from Sam in the video. One of the things that I'm pretty passionate about is you really need to give people an opportunity to struggle a little bit for them to gain and to be able to learn. So let people struggle, but just in a safe manner. And then the next exercise we were doing was for Sam's core strength and his ability to safely move about in his chair, move about in any seated posture. It's just building that strength to bring yourself back up to center so that if someone were to bump into you, if you were to reach down to the floor to something, you know that you can safely get yourself back up over your center. Any questions?
This next exercise is something that's fairly new for Sam that we started. And the reason we started this is he's got some bone density issues. So Sam came up with a way for him to get some weight on his hip and his femur so that it could help with his bone density.
Kind of quadruped using his elbows. So instead of hands and knees, he's not really got quite the strength to keep his arms straight here, but we want to get some weight bearing. Weight bearing is one of those things that's really good for tone, really good for bone density, really good for strength, even in that shoulder complex. So this is our method here. Really good posture to just maintain. We've got a little bit of support at the belly because we've got a little bit of need for core strength there, and this is a pretty new position for Sam as well. With being here, you can branch out in quite a few ways. First thing to kind of do is some head lifts here, working on that strength in the upper back, dropping the head and raising it back up. Have you do about 4 more of those. And trying to keep those elbows right under the shoulders, as centered as possible. And also do some forward and backward rocking here. My leg's just here blocking his from going out anywhere. He's got pretty good balance here at this point, so we're not too worried about him going anywhere. About 5 more rocks. Try to bring your knee in a little bit. Good. Break it all, or are you doing okay here? Need a moment. Gonna rest. After we're done resting, after we get our leg back in position here, we're gonna work the shoulder blades a little bit. So I'm gonna have you pushing your chest away from the mat by pushing your elbows down into the mat. Good, and then dropping back down. So working kind of the punching muscles of the shoulder, the ones that are going to bring your shoulder blade forward and allow you to reach better. Good. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Very good. Got one more exercise in you? All right. The last thing we're going to do here is, again, for the shoulder stability, a little bit for the hip stability as well. I'm going to have you just crawl your elbows about 2 crawls forward and 2 crawls back. We're just holding him a little bit here to ensure this is steady, but performing that weight shift and that movement of the shoulders, working on that shoulder stability and movement here. Good. And back. We'll do that one more time, Sam. And back. Very nice. All right, we ready to come down, rest, bicep strengthening.
Okay, Sam, you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So I talked a lot about what we were doing while we were there, but weight bearing is one of the best things you can do just in terms of overall health in general. So if you or your loved one still has the ability to stand as often as you can, walk, enjoy being upright. But if you've got the ability to even do it supported, getting a standing frame can be really important in terms of contracture management in the feet, in the knees, especially once you start using the wheelchair. You spend so much time in that kind of crouched posture that you're not getting that normal upright weight bearing. And it does not take a whole lot of time before you lose just the muscle length to even be able to get to standing upright, as some of you know. But if you can't do that, there's the standing frame for that. There's that quadruped positioning, which we just saw. If you're able to get up just on your knees even, that's another great option for weight bearing. Yeah, basically anything that can go down and be weight through the feet or through the legs is a good thing.
Can you talk a little bit about hip contracture and
Yes.
like laying on your stomach, perhaps?
Yes. So a lot of times you're going to have surgeries or circumstances where you can't be weight bearing for a period of time. And during those times, it's very important to have tummy time. So basically where you're laying on your stomach for extended time periods, at least 3 to 5 minutes to get that muscle lengthening effect, but in reality, doing that a few times a day. So that your hips are not becoming shortened and shortened and shortened as you're spending more time on your chair or sleeping on your side.
Ellie, I have a question.
Okay.
You said that he has a bone density problem.
Yes.
Is that part of FSHD or is that something totally unrelated?
So jump in here, correct me where I'm wrong, Sam, but so your bones have to bear weight and they have to have like the pounding of like walking and stuff to keep the muscle dense. So the more time that you're in a chair. So these are all the things that I didn't know that could happen once he kind of moved to a chair full time. All the contractures, because you're sitting, the contractures of the hips, the knees, the elbows, because they're like this, and then the bone density. He just had an x-ray on his hip because he was having problems with his hip, and they're like, he's losing mineralization in his hip and in his upper bone because it's not weight bearing. That's just one of the byproducts of being in a wheelchair and being non-ambulatory. So as much weight as you can get on there, you know, on his knees. So that's what we've been working on, putting him on his hands and knees and trying to get some weight bearing to increase that bone density because there's really no other way to do it. You know, he takes lots of calcium, he takes vitamin D. You know, at some point, you know, he could take medicine for like osteoporosis, but there's a lot of side effects for that. It's just one of the things that comes with your body not moving the way it was intended to move and walking and standing. Did I say that correctly, Sam?
Yeah, that is exactly correct. And your bones really need that kind of pounding, the muscles pulling on them even to keep that density in them, or your body does tend to start to leach nutrients from the bones.
So my son he just turned 4. So should I talk to the doctor about taking like extra calcium and stuff like that? Yeah, is that something that is of the norm?
Is your son a wheelchair user?
No.
Okay, then you probably don't have to worry about that at this point in time if he's weight bearing like a normal person of his age.
Okay.
It would be much more of a concern as you go forward if his mobility does become more and more limited.
Okay.
So the thing that I would love to tell parents of younger kids, first of all, I hope your kid never progresses to the point where they need to be in a wheelchair. But if they do, stretching, keeping those contractures and keeping an eye on all this kind of stuff like bone density and everything, and the tendons just tightening up, you know, the pulmonary stuff, all that is affected once they get into a chair and they're not as mobile as they were before. All this stuff that I had no idea. Like is not really FSHD related, but it is because they're not running around and doing all those things, and it affects a lot of function in the body. And I wish I had known that earlier, because I'm kind of playing catch up now because I didn't realize all this stuff was going to happen.
And how old was Sam when, how old was he when he was diagnosed, and how old was he when he became wheelchair bound?
So he was diagnosed when he was 6. He was in an AFO for his right leg when he was 7 or 8, and then he got another AFO for his left leg, and he started using a wheelchair part-time, like for long distances, when he was probably 11. And he would walk around in the house in his classroom, but then if we were shopping or going anywhere in between classes, when he was changing classes, he used a wheelchair. And then he started using it sort of full-time when he was about 13. So he's been in it pretty much full-time for about 3 years now. But again, everybody's different. The trajectory for everyone is different. But back when Sam was diagnosed, they told me not to let him exercise too much, that it would actually hurt him. And now they're saying that's not the case. So, you know, let your kids run and play. That's what I would say. Again, just parent to parent. I'm obviously not a doctor, but Kristen, do you want to jump in here and say something about that with Kate?
Yeah. Megan, he's so young that it's just let him be a kid, you know, and let him go play all the games that he possibly can. And, you know, just keep an eye on things, but, you know, as much fun as you can make life, you just do what you can to make it light and fun so that they're not in the burden of this disease. And it's so good for them to just be out playing with friends and just living a normal, active life. They may not be able to keep up all the time, but you know, that's okay. It's keep them moving as much as possible. When we got diagnosed, Will in Rochester, you know, 5 years ago, I would have sent you home and had her sit. But now what we know about the disease today, keep her in physical therapy and just keep her moving. You know, don't limit her, just let her go. And, you know, so that's what we've done.
If there's no more questions, I'll move on to the next exercise.
To help Sam do this, we're decreasing the degree of difficulty a little bit by getting rid of some freedom of movement. So he can't move out and in with this, and he's having to move from his biceps to achieve this. This is also a pretty difficult move for Sam to initiate right now, so we're working through partial range of motion. We're about halfway through here. We go up from there, both sides. Good job. Back down just to my hand. Back up, both hands all the way down. And back up. Nice job. Of course, to make it harder, you can give him more freedom, either taking away the dowel rod, or you can make him move through increased range of motion. To make it easier, you can provide assistance. Some people will also do really well with resistance, going into a bit of the stretch reflex as well. Very nice. Give me about 5 more. 2.
And he is getting stronger at this. He used to not be able to do this, so he is improving. He is getting stronger.
Up, 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 up. 5. Very good. So for this one, we're moving side to side, working on the range of motion with his shoulder abduction, reaching out to the side. Also some strength there, but using the assistance of the other side to make it a little bit easier to reach further. Giving him just a little bit of support at the core. Sam has done really well on his core control, so he is fine without that core support as well. You can always always make this more challenging for the core by adding a dynadisc under the bottom, or even having him do it with his eyes closed, so he's having to use that internal sense of where the balance is. Work on some of his lower extremity.
You want to talk about that at all, Sam?
Yeah, sure. So that was, Sam's been having some kind of very specific difficulties with his arms since his Harrington rod placement surgery. So one of the specific things that we're working on for him is being able to self-feed using his right hand only. So we're really trying to use the bicep, get it nice and strong, but because it's not strong enough to go on its own, one of the things you can do is do that dowel rod just to have a buddy to help it. And it usually comes along at the same pace, and the other side teaches the weaker side, for lack of a better way to describe that. And then it's also just a good way to work into more range of motion than you otherwise could without having that assistance as well. Also, for anybody that's starting to have difficulty with hand control, holding, gripping, using that different hand movement can be really important for maintaining the grip and the ability to use the fine motor control of the hand.
Motor control and reaction time so that we make sure his brain is jiving with what his legs are doing as well as it can. I'll roll the ball to him. He's going to stop it and roll it back to me. The easiest way to go about it is doing the stronger side. If somebody has a stronger side, then switching over to the less in control side. Kick, 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 big kick. Nice job. Of course, it's always going to be easiest to go directly to someone. Nice job, Sam. You can give it a little nudge if you need to on this. Oh, use that other foot. Nice job. Good kick. We'll do a few more just on that side. Big kick, big kick. Nice job. That was a bad roll. Go other side one more time. A little bit more advanced way of doing this is going to be to go to a random side, the person deciphering which leg it's coming toward as it comes toward them. Nice. And even more difficult is making the person reach a little bit within a range of motion. Just don't go so far that they're falling off of whatever surface they're on.
One, two.
All right. So now we're going into Kate, Kristen's daughter, some physical therapy exercises that she does with her trainer. Do you want to say anything about the ball movement, Sam? Or
Oh, not too much. I think we covered it fairly well in the video. We'll say when it comes to motor control, if you're trying to relearn a skill or a specific movement that you've recently lost for whatever reason, repetition is the name of the game. The more you can repeat something, the more you're going to learn it and the more you're going to be able to do it automatically. So by repetitions, I'm not meaning like 10, I'm meaning like 1,000 of them. So make it something that's really easy to do, but something that you really can commit to and do over and over again every day.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Smile.
4.
I can't smile. It's a video and.
Smile with your eyes and focus. 7. Go to 20 this time. 8, 9, touch my hand. 10, 11, 12, good job. 13, 14, 15.
You said 10.
And then I said 20, 17, 18, 19, 20. Nice.
You want to talk about that a bit, Sam?
Yeah, I might need Kristen, her name was. Might need a little bit of your help on this one.
Okay.
But, what it appears is you're hanging and you're getting traction through the whole body while you're doing that. So you're getting a good stretch from basically out of the wheelchair position.
So yeah, so they're trying to they're trying to use gravity to build strength, but they're also trying to make it fun, because when you're dealing with an 11-year-old, she wants to play games more than she actually wants to do the therapy. So they have to mix it up, and so they throw her into that harness and lift her up, because that way they don't get a fight. As you heard, she was already fighting them as she's suspended in air, and she loves it. So it's kind of a dual thing for them. But so Kate is not, she probably should be in a wheelchair, but we have not put her in one. She's on a scooter. She's on a scooter that is, everyone uses it. It's not a handicap type thing. It's this trike that is electric, and she cruises all around on it. And then she has to transfer to and from everywhere within school. She's on a walker at school. So in between classes, she takes the walker in between that. So what they're trying to do is just keeping her as active as possible. We saw her biggest decline during COVID. So when she wasn't keeping up with her peers, and she was sitting more often than not because she was home, and we didn't have PT because it got canceled because we were in the pandemic. It literally within 4 months, we saw a massive decline in her. And so we're trying to fight back from that, as Ali said, that she's making up for lost time. We're still trying to fight back from the pandemic, and the lack of peer pressure she had to keep herself moving.
Yeah, and what you said is absolutely right. If you don't move it, you will lose it. So you got to stay moving, stay on top of what you can do, make it as fun as possible, try to play as much as possible, but you have to use what you have in order to maintain what you have, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, they were giving her a little bit of stretch with that, but also a little note that I'll add is, just because muscles are tight, like her hip flexors might be tight, that doesn't mean that they're not weak along with that. So doing that strengthening, pulling up against gravity with that marching is another important exercise to do for the strength there and for the strength in the core.
I have another question.
Sure.
So we have not seen a specialist. Our diagnosis is very new. And so everything I've learned about FSHD, I've learned online through Google, which sometimes can be your worst enemy.
Yeah.
But so I have read conflicting things and the majority of the things I have read is that movement, exercise, like, do it. It's fabulous. But I have read a couple articles of scientists, doctors, whoever, that say that when we exercise, we break our muscles down, and that's not good for FSHD. So like I said, the majority of the people are move, exercise. But I have read those few like conflicting articles about breaking the muscle down.
So is it okay if I jump in here for a second? Because
Please do.
similar to you, my son is young. He was diagnosed when he's 6. He's 9 now. Having been in fitness and health and weightlifting, that's one of my big questions that I had too. And what we were told is, you don't want to do heavy weightlifting like a bodybuilder or weight strength with weights, but anything you can do, calisthenics, yoga, Pilates, things that are your own body weights, running and playing with other kids to strengthen the muscles, and elongate them and stretch them so that they build, and that if there is an episode where you do have muscle loss, you're in a stronger place. But the key with it is not to get to the point of fatigue. Having been in lifting and fitness competitions in my past, for me, the goal was to get to that point where if I was lifting the weights, I couldn't lift them anymore. But in my son's case, that's not the case. We have to help him learn his limits so that he knows what that level of fatigue is. Not the fatigue where, hey, I just don't want to run anymore, but the fatigue where he starts building the lactic acid in the muscle cells they start to break down, because that is how you build muscle mass. Is you essentially you rip the muscles apart and then they rebuild, and that's how they get stronger and bigger. But by doing Pilates and doing yoga and those strengthening type of exercises and own body weights, like just push-ups, crunches, things like you were seeing in these videos, you build the muscle without ripping it apart. And as long as you understand that, he learns as they learn the body and what starts to hurt, stop. Those are the things you need to be aware of. Like my son, we have him in football because he loves it. We were told by the Children's Hospital of Richmond, hey, if he's loving it right now, don't stop him from doing it. He needs to learn his limits, and we tell all of his coaches, and they all know, so that he needs to take an extra break or two. He doesn't always keep up with all the other kids, but he's our little go-getter, a little engine that could never stops him from going to do it. So that's the difference. You probably saw that, yes, building muscle mass and doing all that through ripping and tearing the muscle masses is how if you're going to be a bodybuilder, if you're going to be a Olympian. But there's all kinds of ways to still build and strengthen that muscle without getting to that point. Being so young, it's really about helping them learn at what point do they stop, right? Like me, again, I would go in and do leg day, and I want wobbly legs walking out of there. My son, I'll never do that to him because that's not the right thing for him to do. But there's all kinds of exercises you can do that'll strengthen those muscles, that'll elongate them, that'll stretch them without them getting to the fatigue and the rip point where the lactic acid starts to build up. And that's that burn that you typically feel when you go to the gym. So that's just my 2 cents, what I've learned. But again, having it such a young age for my son, being diagnosed with it, Google being your best and your worst enemy, best friend and your worst enemy for all those things that are out there. Yeah. Him loving sports and being an active kid, little boy who wants to just go out and play with those friends. At least now the blessing in disguise about all this is we know that now, so we can help them learn those things. Right. Whereas before, again, having been in fitness, the old school mentality of, hey, work until it hurts, keep going, can't do that. And so we can learn to do those exercises, and physical therapy, as I've been saying, this has been fantastic for him in learning where his limits are, learning where the strengths is, the range of motion, and improving those, and just doing what you can to do those kind of exercises. And physical therapy has been a best friend for him. And again, same thing as she was saying, in the pandemic where we had to switch from physical therapy, going there, and we were seeing huge improvements, to we were doing some online, teleconference. It just didn't have the same effect and the same work. Now we're getting back into that as we're coming out of the pandemic and getting back into that. But keep them as active as it possibly can is what we were told. Doing whatever they want to do to just have fun and be a kid, and enjoy that. But understanding that they got to just think about their limits a little differently, right?
They're
That's
also pretty
my-
resilient with knowing their limits. Yeah, they have a better attunement. Like every body person I've taken her to, it's been like she knows her body better than most adults. Like, we'll take her, she goes to a massage therapist for neurocranial massages, and she's like, oh no, it's that one right there. And the massage therapist will look at me and be like, she's spot on. Like she knows her muscles better than most adults. She knows her limitations. It's just innate. Allie, I don't know if you know that noticed that with Sam. Like they just know their bodies because they have to.
Yeah, and I think there's been some times where Sam has overdone it a little bit, and then he's just kind of needs a day to rest. Like we used to always say, like he would play hard and he'd be like, oh, I need a rest day, and then he would just rest. So, but yeah, I mean, just keep them moving. But I think, yeah, you're spot on. You don't want them to get to the point where they overdo it. But again, they'll learn that, and you just can help them with that. But yeah, let them play, let them run and play while they can. And hopefully they'll be able to do it for a long time.
Yeah.
I just don't take my 4-year-old to the gym and hit the bar.
Exactly. I'm working out with a football team.
It might not be an Olympic squatter, but he can still
Right.
squat.
But yeah, all right, so we're gonna press with this next one if there's no more questions. But thank you guys, it's a very good discussion.
Yeah, but I think that aggravated it.
It aggravated. Okay, that's good. Squeeze at the top two.
I don't know if I did it wrong, but I think it aggravated it.
We'll check again, but it's good for me to know.
6, 7,
Does it feel okay when I do it?
8.
I
I want the last one to be super tall. 9,
Yeah.
Is it the same pain that you get when you cut
10.
your head?
Very good.
Okay. Make a good donut.
Donut.
Okay, let me just fix it for you. Okay, fingers in. Open.
I know, I was here all the other times you've made me do this.
It's for showmanship.
Showmanship that I don't know how to do it.
No, for the camera.
For the camera that I don't know. So you're showing the camera that I don't know how to do it?
No, I'm explaining to the camera what you're doing. Amazing.
Oh.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, that makes a lot more sense.
It does. Okay. All set. Okay, reach.
You want to talk about that at all, Sam, or you want to press?
Yeah, so you can see in this view right here, actually, and in the video of Sam that we had on his knees and elbows earlier, one thing that both of them do that I believe is fairly characteristic is they've got that very sway back that comes with losing that postural control, that muscular control around the spine. So they were very targetedly working that core strength in that first video. He was giving her some cues to exactly what muscles he wanted her to turn on. So she was able to do that for him. And then in the second little snippet, she's working on her hand control. So specifically her strength with opening her hand. A little bit of control there too, just forming that donut with the clay, or with the putty rather. Putty is a great tool, by the way, for anybody starting to struggle with hands. Play with the putty, do anything that you can with the hands when you're young to keep that strength there.
But even we've been playing with putty for years, from that perspective. Like I'll give her putty to go find like buttons or pens or things when we're on a long car ride. Like while she's watching shows, she'll also be playing with a putty and always trying to use her hands. Most recently, I got her a device called Squig. It's like an egg, and it's really cool to the touch. And she squeezes it, but it actually takes a registration on her phone as to what her strength is. But the beautiful part for her is that it's always about games with Kate. So while she's at school reading, she'll just be squeezing it, and it's not painful. Asking Kate to do exercises with me at night is so painful. Like she just fights me every step of the way. So I outsource everything I possibly can and find every gadget under the sun that can get her to be interactive and engaged with physical activity, because she's still a child and they just want to play games. They don't want to be sitting there doing serious stretching with me. Like, come on, we got to play yoga right now. Get down on the ground. She's like, no. So, we try and find everything we can, but putty for the little guys, just buy all that putty you can find that's filled with all the different things. They love it. And they have no idea that it's really helping them build their motor skills.
And now hand back to me. Remember what you're supposed to do. Hold, hold, hold. Good. Other arm. Reach. We're gonna try not to throw back, right? We're gonna try to slowly go back. Good. You have. Let's go. Awesome. Okay. Pull your belly up if you can. Yep. Good. Keep leaning forward. Forward. There you go.
Get on a hair.
Hold. Good. Good. Working those triceps, shoulder flexion, and extension. Good. Back. Good. Saving greens for last, I see. Get to my hand. Good.
You could also take it.
No. Then it's not an exercise. Thank you. Last. A little more. Thank you. Good job. And another hand.
Stay right
Get up there. Good. Remember, try to not lean as much. There you go. Good. And ready. You got it. Good. And then keep your head right in the middle. All the way to the top. Good. Last one. Go ahead. Head right in the middle. You got this. Eyes on the squigs. Where is it? Good.
This one is we can move.
We just have a couple, few videos in the pool. But before we move to the pool, is there anything you would like to say about those exercises with Kate, Sam?
Yeah, so those were great. She's got a bit more strength in her arms, or a bit more control in her arms than Sam does at this point. So those were kind of great progressions of kind of the knees and elbows stuff that we were doing in Sam's video. She's able to shift her weight really well there to the point where she can reach, she can really move out of that position. And then the next one where she's reaching up, you're working on that shoulder mobility, which a lot of people really need to work to maintain as well if they want that ability to reach up overhead. And then working on her core control as well. Can always make that harder by asking her to stand on her knees or move to a little bit more challenging position and maintain the same type of centering over her base of support.
So
She
like I
also-
mentioned, go ahead.
The two therapists is also that the second one, the woman is an OT. So she's working just the upper body. And then the gentleman you saw her with, he's working just the lower body. And so she sees him twice a week, and she sees OT once a week for just doing the arms and gripping. And the second visit, they didn't have the video of it, is that she's on a vector. Which a vector is a harness that hangs from the ceiling that she can actually walk an entire gym suspended, and it measures the amount of weight that she needs the harness to hold her. And so the goal is that as she uses this harness, they're able to calculate exactly how much she's needing of that vector to what her body can hold. And over the course of her doing this over the past 4 months, she needed 72% of a weight hold from the vector, and she's now down to 48. So it's moving her in the right direction. And what's nice is that it's a scientific thing. It's not we think this is what's going on. That's what I like about the vector, is that it's actually a core measurement.
Yeah, that is the great thing if you are lucky enough to get rehab that's based out of like a neurological specialty clinic. They do have a lot of neat toys like that in the clinic where you can be scientific, measure exactly how much you need to be where you're at. The reality is, especially for anybody coming out of a rural area, you might not have that available to you, but you can always hack things, if you will. So there's almost always a way to do the same thing where you're getting the exact same care. You just might not be able to tell exactly how much offloading you're doing. But yeah, if you do have specialty neurological services available to you, I highly encourage you to go that route.
We're going to go through a few pool exercises. Like I mentioned before, Sam started off in the pool when he was really weak. He went and did a lot of land exercises, but now we're putting him back in the pool once a month, just mostly for weight bearing on his legs, and just to do some extra sort of strengthening things that he can do in the pool that he can't do on land. So we're going to run through those real quick.
A little bit bigger range of motion than we can on the land. Get all the way to my hand there. Because we've got the water lowering his tone that he's dealing with. And we've also got the buoyancy allowing him to reach higher on his own. This is encouraging a little bit more weight bearing through the legs, especially the contracted legs, so we're able to push against something safely without risk of putting the foot in an abnormal position with any contractures. So I'm giving him quite a bit of upward resistance on this side. Little resistance on the push out. especially focused on the right side since it's a lot more contracted than the left again. Just guiding him into as much hip extension as we can here while he's holding himself on that left leg. We'll go into some standing. Got my foot under his right to protect that foot as it's contracted. And Sam is able to hold himself, push himself up quite well at this point in time, over as long as you can. When you're ready. I know you can do longer than 10 seconds. And then from here, I can even give him a lot more pressure into that right side, help him shift over the right side, so that we're getting more weight bearing in that leg that is contracted, that we're aware is starting to have some bone density issues as well. So working on some bone density management here in the water. Come toward me. Good. When you need to, you sink down and take a break, okay?
Or you can dance through some Michael Jackson. Okay, do you want to talk about the pool time a little bit?
Yeah, we'll try to keep it brief since I know it's getting late into everybody's evening. But the pool we have is a therapy pool, and that's the original reason Sam came to us. The therapy pool is kept between 94 and 96 degrees. That's standard across all therapy pools. What that does is the water's warm enough to allow muscles to relax. So that's why Sam's able to reach further. He's able to stretch further. He's able to move quite a bit better in the water than he can on land. Plus you get decreased weight bearing to kind of fight against. So Sam, you could see a little bit in the video, he can stand on his own, not with too much weight in the right leg. I had to encourage him over to that right side a little bit more where he would stand on it. But things that are totally not possible sometimes on land become possible in the water. So it can be a great place to start out and get started. And usually it's pretty fun for people as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any other questions, any final questions for Sam before I let her go? And we can stay on, the parents can stay on, and we can just discuss a little bit. I don't want to keep you on too much, but do you have any other questions for her?
Here.
Sam, I love your approach. I love that you're willing to solve. I think that the biggest hurdle is, like you said, not the equipment and access to it. It's access to somebody who actually will get in the game with you. And it's rare to find the PTs that will jump in the game and really try and solve the problem and work through how to figure out what's going on with the kids.
Thank you.
Great at that. And also a lot of these things that we do with her, we can do them at home as well. So, we go in with her, but then we practice them at home. So, and she's always thinking of new things for us to do. So thank you so much, Sam. We really, really, really appreciate you. This is a very important topic for all of us. And we thank you for your time.
Oh yeah, you are so welcome. Anybody thinks of any questions later, feel free to send them to Allie and I can get back to you. Be happy to.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam.
So parents, do you have any questions, or is there anything you just kind of want to talk about? It doesn't necessarily have to be physical therapy related. Just going on with your kids that maybe one of us can answer for you. I know your kids are a little bit younger than Kristen's and mine. Maybe we can.
I'm still navigating the whole FSHD world.
We are too, Megan.
Me too.
It's not something that is, there's no playbook. As I would say to Allie, I'm like, where's the playbook? I can follow the playbook. Just figuring it out as I go, and just like hoping for the best is just, really hard.
Yeah. We signed up to go to the FSHD conference down in Orlando this summer.
Great.
Hopefully, like I said earlier, like we haven't seen anybody. We have an appointment with somebody at the end of March, but we got our diagnosis in October. So it's like I've spent months just on the internet. And it's been,
Yeah, and I know you had questions about doctors and putting that team together. And Allie probably has some really good ideas. She's been talking to so many different specialists and doctors and getting a feel for people out there. But it's a tough thing to navigate in putting a team together that will work to the best. And even when you think you have the team, then something happens and you're just like, oh my God, they missed that and I missed that. And how did that happen? And then you're off and running again to try and reassemble different doctors for whatever might have occurred that they didn't think of. And the other thing that I've just recently learned is that the doctors will look at just one problem and they'll go and tell you to go solve that problem, but they're not thinking 360 on what that one problem might do to the other things. And so that becomes the real challenge of learning that pushback. I've learned that doctors don't know it all.
well, so we, his neurologist was the one that like kind of pushed for the genetic testing. And I kept putting it off and putting it off. And I'm like, no. And finally, we hit our out-of-pocket maximum last year, like going to all these specialists, trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with them. So we finally decided, okay, if we're going to do it, like we've hit our out-of-pocket max, let's do all the testing that we can. And that's when it came back. So we just had our appointment. So she literally called me and was like, so your son got your genetic testing came back. He has a form of FSHD, which I had never heard of before. And we had this like 2-minute conversation. We hang up the phone and then I'm left like,
what do I do?
Internet.
Yeah.
And then I just had the follow-up appointment with her a couple weeks ago. And I swear I knew more about it than she did.
Yep. And you're going to find that I actually keep Kate's doctors in check with what's going on with clinical trials. They're like, oh, we didn't know that. It's like, you don't know that. The other thing that as they need devices, which maybe they will, maybe they won't. But the thing that I've also learned is the first thing they want to do is stop. Like, even if they're still walking, they'll be like, oh, they can't make long distances, put them in a chair. And when you show them creative solutions, they're like, well, that's not safe. They shouldn't be in that. They're stuck in 1930s when it comes to solving these problems. And
continue. No, I mean, we're fortunate to be in Virginia here with Frankie and having FSHD too. And so Megan, I know that feeling, the same thing. We got the call, started with our neurologist and went down that journey. We got the call and it was like, we got rolled out first in the first screening for muscular dystrophy initially, as we were chasing down what the heck was, what's causing the issues that we were chasing. And then we did genetic testing for that and that came back and it was the same thing. It was like, we had a 5-minute call. Hey, this is what you have. Great, now we have an answer. But especially for you, I think you said it's FSHD2 that he has. Yeah. For that one, it's we have here in Richmond, with the Children's Hospital of Richmond, with one of the 13 hubs for that trial. So we have specialists that we're able to go see on that. And even they said it's to have FSHD2 diagnosed in children as young as my child was when we were diagnosed and yours is rare. So finding that connection with somebody that can have it, because my wife and I were in the same boat. She was like, who do we reach out to? And while there's many people out there that are there's like the ladies here organizing this, right? That can help, that want to help us get to, it's different and it's difficult for the age group. But I mean, I gave you the contact information. My wife, I'm sure she would love to connect with you and talk about that. And this group has been amazing so far. The things I found out about some of these clinical studies and the trials. You know, you are your child's best advocate. You got to be their champion. And you have to go. Like she said, they'll try to find one thing and go after that. And we just fell into a blessed place where our neurologist said, we're going to get to the bottom of this and chased it down and got the right people finally engaged and helped us figure this out. It's okay, great, we have an answer now, but what do we do next, right?
Right. That's how I thought. I'm like, oh, that's.
I want to solve it, right? I want to fix it. I want to fix it. How do I fix it? What do we do?
Right.
It's just a compound treatment of all these things. The thing you got to think about too that's great is with all the research that's going on and the awareness is that wasn't there before, and the ability to do the things that we have now, that we're so much closer to treatment than we were even 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all continue to do, joining things like joining this FSHD society and connecting and utilizing tools, it's going to get more and more advanced.
So one more thing I wanted to ask all of you guys is I reached out to Peter Jones, who was doing a study, and he sent us 4 genetic testing kits, like for free. And they arrived, and I am just so nervous. I never even thought twice about it. And then all of a sudden my husband was like, well, what if like I'm the one that gave it to him? And so all of a sudden I became so nervous. And then I have this 8-year-old that they want, they want all of the testing from us. There's 4 of us, me, my husband, Eli, who has FSHD, and then my 8-year-old. I'm like, what if I test my 8-year-old and then he comes back positive, and then the rest of his life, I'm like worried, like, is that a sign of FSHD? It's brought a lot of stress to my life, like, I don't know, have you guys had your other children, if you have other children tested, like?
So I have 2 other boys that are younger than one of those diagnosed. So those are very, very, very similar questions. Is it me? Is it my wife? Because it's the genetic gene. Is it a mix of both of ours that just happened to win the wonderful lottery of FSHD to have my children have that gene? So I'm not a doctor. I'm just like you, I'm a parent who's concerned about my child, but all those same questions. So I can tell you, all I can speak to is what we were told, right, by our doctor on that. And that may be conflicting, but it's what we were told. Is unless my other 2 start to show something, some kind of symptom or understanding of why do we chase down my son Frankie, right? What was it that caused that little trigger? If we notice that, be more vigilant about that with those 2, because there's a chance that it's there. But necessarily don't go after the testing on that, because and something I learned from our last call in this group, right? Unfortunately, there's a bias out there.
Mm-hmm.
So if they never show any symptoms, but they're tested for it, insurance-wise and all the rest of that stuff, now they're labeled with having a pre-existing condition.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right? So for myself, I'm an old man now, so if I went and got tested, I'm already getting insurance, all that stuff, it's a different thing to find that out. But what I also love about doctors is the type that he is diagnosed with being FSHD2, it's most likely some of my genes and some of my wife's genes and the way they blended, right? Because it could have been dormant. It could be in me and dormant, so I'm not going to see any symptoms of it. And my wife was dormant, so she wouldn't see any symptoms of it. But the combination of our 2 genes together activated those FSHD2, which allowed the DUX4 to continue and to be able to be affected by it genetically within my son. So there's a probability that both my other 2 children have it, yes. Could it go unnoticed or undetected with no symptoms for years or ever show in them? That's also a possibility. So they just said before you go ahead and do that, if you're not seeing any of those symptoms or there's signs in my other 2, it may not be wise to get them tested right now. Be more vigilant as well. That's the things that they told us. And one of my neurologists or had.
So the Dr. Jones test isn't a clinical diagnosis. It's just more of an informational diagnosis. I have an older son, he's an adult, and then my son Sam. And I wanted to know because my son, he could have kids. I just wanted to know.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't test him either. So we all did the Jones test. Sam, my older son, their dad, and myself. And Sam came back with the only one that had FSH. However, it's complicated, and I don't pretend to understand all of it, but there's a polymer at the end of it. If you have an A polymer, that means you're the one that can let it through. If you have a B, it blocks it. That's the extent of my scientific knowledge on that. I have the A. So even though I don't have FSH, I'm not carrier of FSH, but if I didn't have the A, it never would have got to my son. So I was just like, and I got the results and I looked at it and I was like, what does this mean? I called Dr. Jones and he was very nice. He took my call, he talked to me, and I understand what you're saying. You have a bit of a guilt, even though it wasn't I don't have FSH, but I had this A thing that if I would have had a B, like their dad and my older son, it never would have gotten through. So there is a level of guilt. And I called the geneticist and I was like, what does this mean? Did I do this? Like, what's going on? And she's like, you can't feel guilty about it. It's just one of those things that happens. It's spontaneous and you have no control over it, you know? And for me, I just wanted to know, because my older son's 26. So I just wanted him to be able to know for family planning and things like that, because he was concerned about that if he could pass it on, and he can't, thank God. But I think that's just a question that every family has to answer for themselves, you know.
Yeah, it's truly a personal choice of what's
Right.
sane in this situation. But I also look at it from, you could pass a learning disability on, you could pass some rare missing adult teeth on, right? You could pass so many things on that, you know, that give them challenges. That this just happens to be a disease that sucks, but you can't feel guilty for the things that you pass on, because it's part of recreating.
It is, but it's normal. I mean, it's just natural for you. And I got over it.
Totally natural.
You will, you know, but the other thing is, and you know, our kids can do so many things. There's so many things that they can accomplish. And I don't know that, I know I always talk about the disease because that's what we're here to talk about and to help each other. But one of the things I want you guys, especially with the younger kids, your kids have so much to look forward to in life. This isn't, something that's going to stop them from doing what they really want to do. They will find a way and they will adapt, and they can do great things and accomplish great things. It's one of those things, but it's not.
They're so resilient. They're so resilient. And when they're dealing with this topic at an early age, it's not as hard as it is for when people discover it later in life. As much as they have had a great life, there's a bigger mourning process than what our kids are going through, because they're just living it. And so for them, it's just part of daily lives. For my husband and I, it's a much bigger mourning and a much bigger death of a dream than it is for her. And she has a completely fulfilled life. Like, she's got so many friends. She's out every single day. We live in the city, so she's getting home from school by herself with all her buddies, going to 7-Eleven or Starbucks to get her snack, like things that I never thought she could do. And she just figures them out. And I'm like, well, how did you do that? And she's like, what do you mean, how did I do that? So they just have this resiliency about them. And it's not just her. I've met it with every kid I've met that has the disease. There's a resiliency because they've had to solve life in a different way than we've had to. And they've had to approach it and in a different light. And so it gives them a different skill set that allows them to conquer.
So, and again, we're here for you. If anything comes up, and things will, Sam's had several surgeries. They've wanted a feeding tube. A lot of things have come up, and some things I wish I wouldn't have done. Some things I'm glad I pushed back on. So at any time, if something comes up, reach out to one of us and say, this is happening. The doctors are recommending this, and your child better than anybody. So if it doesn't feel right, or they're pushing them in a way that you don't want them to be pushed in, call us, and maybe we've experienced it, and we can certainly tell you our experiences with it. And again, you're gonna have to make your own decision for your own child, but we can say, yeah, I did this and this helped, or I did this and I'm glad I pushed back against the feeding tube, and I'm glad that I didn't put them in a chair as soon as they wanted to, or I wish I wanted to have that one surgery, or whatever the case may be. And we can, we've been there, done that, some of us. So we're here to help you, at least give you our experience.
Our experience and what we might have done differently, or how we solved something. The other thing, you had questions, Megan, I know, about the MOVE study. So it's the MOVE study is you actually have to go to a clinical site to enroll your son in the MOVE study. So like Kate and I are heading up to Rochester in the end of June when school's out, and she's gonna do a full day with the team in Rochester and enroll her into the MOVE study. They don't need to take blood. They don't need to do anything scary. All they're gonna do is have your child just do exercises, and they're just gonna monitor, and then you take him back the same time next year and they monitor again. And what this is doing is it's creating the natural history studies that you guys definitely need from the standpoint of clinical trials, because the drugs that they're putting into process will be definitely approved for, if something gets approved, will be approved for 18 and older. Possibly they're putting in for 12 and older, but that means anyone 12 and younger will not have access till they reach the age of 12. And that's the reason why Allie and I are working so hard together to try and get a natural history study moving for the kids, because it would be tragic, as Allie always says, it would be tragic that they get a therapy approved and now a subset of kids that need it more than adults, in my opinion, can't have access to it because it wasn't clinically trialed or dosed out for the kids.
Mhm.
And
Right.
on that Go study, we just enrolled Frankie in that, and after hearing from you guys here, and we were fortunate, almost like the next day, we were going to our 6-month checkup.
Nice.
And
How
so
was
we
it?
there, and we did it. They set us up there because it's one of the sites that does it. Exactly like you said, did some exercises, did some running. It was almost like part of his normal 6-month checkup, just with a couple extra conditional things.
Nice.
They're recording that, documenting that, so it's almost like just okay. Here's the other specialists coming in. Now we're going to do some leg and roll, check this range of movement, moving down these stairs. And now they've got that log registered, and we'll go to our next appointment. So it's very, very just, hey, we're just doing some checks, and they made it fun games like as they did it. Yeah.
Cool. That's good to hear.
Megan, where do you live?
I am in Pensacola, Florida. So like the panhandle of Florida.
There's a research site somewhere. I'll have to look. Let me send it
So I
to you.
think the closest to us is Gainesville, which is like on the east coast of Florida. I'm on the west coast of Florida, but it's like, I mean, it's definitely doable. It's just not super close.
Well,
Right.
that's why I picked Rochester and in June, because snowstorms, weather. Like, you know what? Like I told you the first time we talked, Megan, it's slow moving. So
Yeah, I'm taking Sam all the way.
Actually, an advice that one of the doctors, I've reached out to so many people in the last 3 months, but somebody, he was like, Megan, he goes, there are some diseases out there that I would say, get on the next flight out. I need to see Eli. He's like, but FSHD is not one of those. Even early onset that is faster progressing than other forms of it. He goes, there is time. So, because this was like January and I had our appointment in the March or whatever. He's like, just be patient, which I know is hard for you to hear, but
yeah, and the thing is, don't rush any decisions, right? Don't rush, if you're not feeling right about doing the testing, don't do it now, but just keep it in the cabinet for when you do feel like it's the right time. There's a mourning process. There's a I'm not even going to say it's not acceptance, but there's just a ability to cope, ability to live with it. And you start to be able to digest more as it goes on and figure it out. Like when Kate stopped being able to walk completely on her own, I was like, I can't do this. Like I literally had a full day where I was like, I don't even know what to do. I don't know how to solve this. And the next day I woke up, I'm like, okay, we're going to solve it. We got to figure it out. And so, you just got to slowly digest, and because it's not a critical acute decision in a hospital, you can take that time to digest and figure out what is the right decision for you, because that's really, there's no answers really. It's what makes you feel sane. Should Kate be in physical therapy 3 days a week? And on top of it, I have a personal trainer as well. Probably not, but it makes me feel sane. So we're doing it.
I get it. I went through a period where like people would be like, how are the boys? And I just be, woo! Like, just like,
And there's still going to be those days.
Yes.
There's someone will be
but
like, how
now
are the
like
boys?
people can ask me, how are the boys? And like, I can talk about it without completely losing it, you know?
Oh my God. No, there's still days. Like, Allie see me. I've lost it in front of doctors left, right, and center, right? I lost it in front of the whole fulcrum clinical team that's working on the drug in clinical 3s. You know, it just takes over. And it's okay.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead, unless you guys have something pressing. I know we've been on here for a while and we have
Yep.
things to do, but thank you guys so much.
Thank you,
for
Allie.
showing
This
up.
is really great.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And thanks for sending the videos of Kate, and hopefully other parents will see this and they'll get something out of it. I really can't stress enough. Just keep your kids moving, keep them moving, keep them going.
Moving. And then also it help us with getting more parents to be active like you guys. Like, it's just so great that you guys are involved and you're in it to win it with us.
Right.
Last month was my first month attending the meeting, and there were quite a few people on there last month.
I think it's because it depends on the topic. When it comes more about clinical and drug discovery, you see more people, and you know, the importance of physical therapy is, you know, we just got to keep beating that drum because it's so important.
It's so important.
Yeah.
It is very important.
Yeah.
Wish there things I knew, you know, that I knew, wish I knew them back then that I know now, you know, so
For sure.
keep your kids going. And again, if you need anything, we're here, you know, reach out and get your kids in that move study. It's very easy. Email them, they'll set you up an appointment.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Thanks. Good
Appreciate
night.
you guys.
Bye.